Hi there. Welcome back to Haunting Vales. Tonight, we uncover a secret hidden not in a crime scene, but within the delicate folds of a letter. At first glance, it appears ordinary. Ink on paper, words on a page. But beneath the handwriting lies a cipher, a code that someone has risked everything to conceal. Why was it written? Who was meant to read it? And most importantly, what terrible truth does it reveal once unlocked? Join us as Hercule Poirot follows the trail of a coded message that could expose a murderer or bury the truth forever. If you enjoy these mysteries, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Haunting Vales, and ring the bell for more Poirot cases. Chapter 1. The Arrival of the Letter. It was a gray, restless morning in London when Hercule Poirot received the letter that would set in motion one of the most curious puzzles of his career. The fog clung low across Whitehaven mansions, blurring the city into smudged silhouettes. From his armchair near the window, Poirot sat immaculate as ever, his patent leather shoes shining, his mustaches stiff and exact, his eyes alert with their usual green-gray intensity. On the small table beside him rested his coffee, dark, precise, measured. Not a drop too much milk, not a single sugar cube out of place. Such was the order of Hercule Poirot's life, a perfection mirrored in the symmetry of his breakfast tray. But symmetry, mon ami, is easily disturbed. And that morning, the knock at his door carried with it an air of disquiet. Arthur Hastings, ever loyal and good-hearted, answered before Poirot could rise. Hastings' step echoed across the polished floorboards, his cheerful voice announcing, "A letter for you, Poirot. Special delivery." Poirot raised one arched eyebrow. "Ah, at this hour? Curious indeed, Hastings. Already I sense the irregularity. And when the irregularity presents itself, one must prepare for the crime." Hastings chuckled, used as he was to Poirot's grand pronouncements. Yet when he handed over the envelope, his amusement dimmed. For the paper was of an unusual thickness, creamy, expensive, and stamped with a deep green wax seal. No return address. Poirot turned it over delicately between his fingers, as though it might burn him. His eyes narrowed, catching the faintest impression pressed beneath the wax, a curious symbol, like two entwined serpents. He slid it open with his ivory paper knife, and a single folded sheet slid out. Hastings leaned closer, impatient. "What does it say?" Poirot read aloud, his tone crisp, clipped, deliberate. "Monsieur Poirot, you are a man of puzzles. You pride yourself on symmetry, on order, on solving that which others cannot. Enclosed is a cipher. Crack it, and you will discover the truth about a crime not yet committed. Fail, and the blood of the innocent will be on your conscience. The cipher begins where the murder of Roger Ackroyd ends. The rest is for you to see." Poirot lowered the page slowly, his eyes glittering. Hastings, incredulous, burst out, "What utter nonsense! Some practical joke, surely." "Non, mon ami," murmured Poirot. "It is not nonsense. Regard the type, an Underwood machine, early model. Regard also the ink, faint at the edges, suggesting the ribbon was near exhaustion. Regard, above all, the reference to Roger Ackroyd. That is not chosen lightly. The murder of Roger Ackroyd had been one of Poirot's most notorious cases, where truth and deception twined so tightly that even Hastings had been shaken to his core. That someone would invoke its name, years later, struck Poirot as deliberate, a challenge hurled at his intellect. Poirot unfolded the second sheet within. Upon it, lines of symbols stretched across the page. Circles, triangles, slashes, dots, arranged in seeming chaos. But Poirot knew chaos was only another pattern yet unseen. He studied it in silence, while Hastings fidgeted. The ticking of the mantel clock filled the room. Finally, Poirot spoke, softly, "A cipher, yes. And it begins where Ackroyd ends. That is the key, Hastings. The murderer in that case used a written word to confess. Here, another uses the written word to conceal. Ah, the symmetry of human wickedness. Hastings shook his head. But what if it's just gibberish? Poirot allowed himself a small smile. Gibberish? Non, non. These are the footprints of the mind, Hastings. And no matter how light, Poirot will follow. He rose, placing the cipher neatly upon the desk. Outside, the fog thickened, swallowing the city whole. Poirot's voice, low and deliberate, carried into the silence. This is no mere prank. Someone intends a crime, and they have chosen Hercule Poirot as their adversary. The hours that followed saw Poirot immersed in the cipher. His pencil traced the shapes, his mind darting between languages, codes, ciphers of the Great War, even recalling strange puzzles once encountered in the ABC murders. He muttered softly in French, lips tightening when patterns failed to emerge. Hastings, growing restless, finally exclaimed, "Poirot, old man, you can't sit there forever staring at symbols. Let me take you out. Fresh air will help." Poirot gave him a withering glance. "Hastings, you are a man of action, but not always of reflection. Yet even you must see, there's method here. Observe, the triangles occur every 12th symbol. That is not accident. And these dots, always in pairs, never alone. Someone has hidden their truth within order. The human brain leaves its fingerprint, Hastings, even in deceit." The words had scarcely left his mouth when another knock sounded at the door. This time, it was Mrs. Hubbard, the building's housekeeper, holding out a telegram. Poirot opened it. His eyes flickered across the short message. "Do not trust the letter. The key is not the key. Meet me at Brown's Hotel, room 209. Midnight. No signature. Only urgency." Hastings gaped. "Well, this gets more and more theatrical. What do you make of it?" Poirot tapped the telegram against his chin. His eyes gleamed. "What do I make of it, Hastings? I make of it that the stage is set. There's a crime in preparation. And Hercule Poirot, he must not only solve the cipher in the letter, but also the cipher in the human heart." That night, as the fog curled thicker still, Poirot and Hastings took a cab to Brown's Hotel. The streets glistened under lamplight, wet with drizzle, their shadows stretching long and sinister. Poirot sat perfectly upright, gloved hands folded upon his cane. Hastings, more nervous, peered out the window at the blur of figures moving through the mist. "I don't like this," he muttered. "It feels like a trap." Poirot smiled faintly. "Mais oui, Hastings. It is always a trap. But the question is, for whom?" When they arrived, room 209 was already unlocked. Inside, the gaslight glowed dim. The room was empty, save for a single object placed upon the bed. A book. Poirot approached slowly, his gloved hand reaching out. The title gleamed in gold upon the spine. "Death in the Clouds." He exchanged a sharp glance with Hastings. Inside, the book was hollowed out, and within its cavity lay another folded note. Poirot opened it with care. The same cipher symbols stare back. Yet beneath them, a line of neat handwriting declared, "The answer lies not in Roger Ackroyd, but in the clouds." Hastings paled. "Good Lord, Poirot, what does it mean?" Poirot's eyes narrowed, his voice no more than a whisper. "It means, Hastings, that our adversary knows their Christie well, and they play with us as the cat plays with the mouse. But Hercule Poirot, he is no mouse." The fog pressed closer to the hotel windows, muffling the city's heartbeat. Within that dim room, Poirot felt the air shift, an unseen watcher, a presence in the dark. And though no sound betrayed it, Poirot knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 2. The Shadow of the Cipher. The clock in the hotel corridor struck midnight with a hollow clang. The sound reverberated down the empty passageways of Brown's Hotel, as though the building itself were tolling a warning. Poirot, standing very still inside room 209, allowed the silence after the strike to settle before he spoke. "Hastings, mon ami," he murmured. "Do you notice? The symmetry again. A cipher in a letter, a cipher in a book. Always layers, like the masks in Murder on the Orient Express. One face conceals another, and behind that, still another." Hastings frowned, his unease mounting. "But who would go to such lengths, Poirot? Why not come straight to you, if there's truly a crime to prevent?" Poirot lifted the hollowed-out copy of Death in the Clouds, turning it carefully in his hands. His fingertips brushed the rough edges where the pages had been carved. "Because Hastings, the criminal, or perhaps the desperate, seeks to test us. They want to know if Poirot can see beyond the obvious. It is the eternal game between cat and mouse, But here, one does not yet know who is the hunter and who the hunted." As he replaced the book upon the bed, Poirot's sharp eyes caught a faint smear of ink on the note that had been hidden inside. Not the bold, printed cipher, but a smudge in the margin. He leaned closer, producing his silver pince-nez. "Regard, Hastings." A fingerprint. The smallest clue, invisible to the careless eye. But it is here pressed in haste. The hand that wrote this was trembling, or hurried. Hastings peered at it. "Do you suppose it's the writer's own?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "Suppose? Non, Hastings. One does not suppose. One observes, one deduces, and one never assumes. We shall keep this safe." He slid the note into his inner pocket. As he straightened, a creak disturbed the silence. Both men turned. The door to the adjoining room, barely ajar, shifted with the faintest motion. Hastings moved instinctively toward it, but Poirot raised a hand. "Pas si vite." Slowly, with caution, they advanced, Hastings throwing the door open with a sudden push. The adjoining room was empty. Only the window stood open, curtains billowing in the damp night air. Hastings muttered, "Someone was listening, and they're gone." Poirot crossed to the window, gazing out. The fog was thick, swallowing the street lamps below. But there, upon the sill, a faint trace remained, a darkened smear of soil, the imprint of a shoe half wet with mud. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Yes, Hastings. Someone was here. They wished to watch, perhaps to warn, perhaps to frighten. But they betray themselves with every careless step. Even the fog cannot conceal the truth forever. He turned sharply. "Come, we have learned what we may here. Now we must decipher." Back at Whitehaven Mansions, the little flat was filled with the steady warmth of the gas fire, a contrast to the clammy fog outside. Poirot had laid out both cipher pages upon his desk, the original and the second copy from the hollowed book. Side by side, the symbols seemed to whisper their secrets to one another. He paced, hands clasped neatly behind his back, while Hastings sprawled in the armchair, baffled. "Poirot, old chap, it's all Greek to me. Triangles, circles, slashes. How can you possibly expect to read meaning into this?" Poirot halted, eyes bright. "But it is Greek, Hastings. Or, rather, it pretends to be. Look, the triangles correspond to deltas, the circles to omicrons. But not entirely. It is a substitution, but also a distraction." Hastings sighed. "You mean it could be anything?" Poirot wagged a finger. Non. It could not be anything. That is where the mediocrity fails. It must be something. And here, we have the clue. The letter itself said, "The cipher begins where Roger Ackroyd ends." Now, the second note tells us the answer lies in the clouds. 2 references, both to stories. 2 tales by our cher Madame Christie. Is it vanity, Hastings? Someone weaving their crime through her works? Or is it a mask still deeper? He sank into his chair, steepling his fingertips. The end of Roger Ackroyd. Yes, Hastings, you recall it well. The killer confessed through the written word. A diary. So, too, this cipher conceals confession in writing. and death in the clouds. That was murder upon a plain, where suspicion drifted like smoke. Perhaps we are to look upward, to that which hovers above. Hastings groaned. But what does that even mean, Poirot? We can't chase metaphors. Surely there must be some practical key. Poirot's eyes glittered. Précisément. And I think I know where it lies. The next morning, Poirot paid a visit to the British Museum reading room. Its great dome spread above them, silent and cavernous, filled with the rustle of scholars and the faint scratch of pens. Poirot moved with purpose, his small frame cutting through the aisles like a needle through cloth. He requested a copy of The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, first edition, and Death in the Clouds. The librarian, bemused, produced them. Poirot set them upon the desk, side by side, and drew from his pocket the cipher sheets. "Hastings," he said, lowering his voice, "observe carefully. The symbols repeat. Here the triangle, circle, slash, 12 places apart. Now, in Roger Ackroyd, page 312, the final page. What is the 12th word?" Hastings bent to look. "Confession." "Ah!" Poirot's eyes danced. "And in Death in the Clouds, chapter 12, the 12th word again. Read it, Hastings." "Poison." Poirot leaned back with satisfaction. "Confession. Poison." And so the pattern emerges. Bit by bit, he aligned the cipher symbols with words from Christie's novels. It was a mad game, elaborate, meticulous. Yet as the hours passed, fragments of a message emerged. Hastings watched in growing awe as Poirot teased meaning from the chaos. At last, Poirot pushed back his chair. "Voila! We have the first sentence." He read it aloud, his voice low and steady. "The victim will die on the 14th, in the House of Mirrors." Hastings stared. Good heavens! A threat, plain as day. But who? And where? Poirot tapped the paper thoughtfully. "That, Hastings, is what remains concealed. But already we know this much. There will be a crime. A murder. A setting most curious, the House of Mirrors. And the date, the 14th. Only 3 days hence." That evening, as the gas lamps flickered to life along the embankment, Poirot and Hastings dined quietly at Simpson's in the Strand. Poirot, though outwardly serene, was deep in reflection. "Hastings," he said at last, "do you know what troubles me most?" Hastings looked up from his roast beef. "Only one thing, Poirot." Poirot ignored the jibe. "It is that our adversary is clever. They taunt me with the works of Christie herself, daring me to follow their trail. But why? Why announce a crime rather than conceal it? A murderer who advertises is not typical. There must be another purpose." Hastings wiped his mouth. "Could it be someone who resents you? Someone trying to trap you in your own game?" Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Perhaps, Hastings. Perhaps indeed." Just then, a waiter approached with a folded note. Poirot accepted it, eyebrow raised. The message inside was brief. "You are too slow, Monsieur Poirot. Already the shadow lengthens. Look to the mirrors. Look to yourself." Poirot's lips thinned. He slid the note away, his mind already racing. Hastings leaned in. "What now?" Poirot's voice was quiet but firm. "Now, Hastings, the game begins in earnest. We are no longer merely solving a cipher. We are racing against death." The city outside shimmered with light and fog, as though London itself were a labyrinth of mirrors. And in the heart of it, Hercule Poirot knew someone had set their trap, and the shadow of the cipher was closing in. Chapter 3: The House of Mirrors. The days that followed moved with a terrible swiftness. The 14th loomed, each hour drawing Poirot and Hastings closer to a crime promised yet unseen. The cipher had spoken clearly. The victim will die on the 14th in the House of Mirrors. But where was such a place? London had no shortage of amusements, yet few as peculiar as a mirrored labyrinth. Poirot, in his customary precision, devoted himself to research. From dawn to dusk, He combed through newspapers, city registries, theater programs, even the archives of the Illustrated London News. Hastings, ever impatient, muttered about wild goose chases. Yet Poirot's faith in the little details never wavered. It was late on the 13th when the breakthrough came. A slim article in the Times caught Poirot's eye. To be reopened for a limited season, the abandoned amusement grounds of Blackfriars. The famed House of Mirrors, once a spectacle of London's leisure, restored for private patrons. Grand unveiling, the 14th of this month. Poirot's mustache quivered with triumph. Voilà, Hastings is here. Not chance, not coincidence, precision. The 14th, the House of Mirrors. Our adversary foretold this very place. Hastings looked grim. Then tomorrow someone dies. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Unless Hercule Poirot prevents it. The following evening, fog pressed thick upon the Thames, swallowing light and sound alike. Carriages rattled past, their lamps dim halos in the mist, while the sound of laughter and music drifted faintly from the reopened fairground. The House of Mirrors rose in shadowy grandeur, its facade lined with gilt-framed glass, its signboard painted with curling letters that gleamed under the lamps. Enter, and see yourself as never before. Poirot and Hastings approached with care. Hastings, ever straightforward, muttered, "Dash it, Poirot, I don't like the look of it. Place gives me the creeps." Poirot smiled faintly. "Mais oui, mon ami," is designed to do so. A house of mirrors exists to confuse, to distort, to conceal. Where one face may seem many, where the truth hides in reflection. En apte théâtre fort murder, n'est-ce pas? Inside, the air was thick with polish and dust. Mirrors lined every surface, stretching infinitely, creating phantom corridors, phantom men. Hastings, seeing his reflection multiplied, gave a nervous laugh. "Feels like there's a dozen of me." Poirot adjusted his tie, immaculate even here. "Be glad, Hastings, that there is only one Poirot. The world could not endure two." They pressed deeper into the labyrinth, their footsteps muffled by carpet. Lamps glowed faintly overhead, their light fractured and multiplied until it seemed they walked beneath 1,000 stars. And then came the sound, a faint rustle, a hurried breath. Somewhere ahead, beyond the mirrored turns. Poirot froze, his hand lifted. Hastings stilled instantly, his soldier's instinct alert. A voice, low and urgent, called out, "Monsieur Poirot, this way." It was a woman's voice, soft, trembling. They followed, turning corner after corner, until at last they entered a small chamber at the heart of the labyrinth. Mirrors on every side reflected them endlessly. And there, upon a velvet stool, sat a young woman, pale as porcelain, her dark eyes wide with fear. She clutched a letter in her hands. Poirot inclined his head. "Mademoiselle, you summoned us?" She nodded quickly, pressing the letter forward. Poirot took it delicately. The envelope bore no seal, only the same hand as before. Neat, precise, typed upon an Underwood machine. Inside, the paper bore a message in cipher symbols. But beneath them, words had been scrawled hastily in ink. "He knows I betrayed him. I am to die here. Save me." Poirot's gaze flicked to her. "Your name, Mademoiselle?" "Evelyn Martin," she whispered. "I was secretary to Sir Charles Denham. I thought it was only games. Codes, puzzles, he adored them. But then I saw what he meant to do. I tried to warn you." Hastings frowned. "Sir Charles Denham? The industrialist?" Poirot's brow furrowed. "Oui, a man of power, of wealth, of vanity. A collector of secrets. And if he plays now with murder, then the danger is grave indeed." Evelyn trembled. "He will kill me. I know too much." Poirot studied her carefully. Every twitch of her hands, every flicker in her gaze. "Perhaps, mademoiselle, or perhaps you play another role in this little drama." in a house of mirrors. Who can say which reflection is true? Suddenly, a sharp crack split the air, the sound of glass shattering, somewhere close. Hastings spun round. Good Lord, what was that? Poirot's eyes flashed. It begins. They rushed through the corridor, mirrors reflecting their every movement. And there, upon the floor, lay shards of broken glass. But not just any glass. Poirot bent, picking up a jagged piece. Its edges gleamed faintly with residue. A fine white powder clung to the corner. Poirot sniffed cautiously, then drew back at once. Poison, Hastings. The same method as in Death in the Clouds. Our adversary leaves us a clue, or a mockery. It seems they know Christie's work better than any. A cold laugh echoed through the maze. Both men stiffened. The sound was everywhere and nowhere, rebounding endlessly. A voice, low, male, deliberate. You're clever, Poirot, but cleverness will not save her. Nor you. Poirot raised his chin, his voice calm and clear. Show yourself, monsieur. A man who hides in mirrors is already revealed to the eyes of Poirot. The laugh faded. Silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Evelyn clutched at Poirot's sleeve, her face drained of color. It's him. He's here. I told you. He means to kill me. Poirot guided her gently aside. Courage, mademoiselle. We must play this game to its end. Deeper they went, the mirrors twisting into grotesque shapes. Hastings, on edge, muttered, I don't like this one bit, Poirot. Feels like we're being hunted. Poirot's gaze remained steady. Mais oui, Hastings. That is exactly what we are. At last, they came to another chamber. At its center stood a grand gilt frame, taller than a man, its mirror polished to perfection. Yet as Poirot approached, he saw it was no mirror at all. Behind the glass, faintly, moved a shadow. He stepped closer. The shadow moved with him. Not reflection. A man behind the glass. Suddenly, the glass slid aside. A figure emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed impeccably in evening clothes. His hair was silver at the temples, his eyes sharp and cold. Sir Charles Denham, Poirot said softly. The man inclined his head, smiling without warmth. So the great Poirot finds me, after all. I wondered how long it would take. Evelyn gasped. Sir Charles, please. Denham ignored her. His gaze fixed upon Poirot. You meddle, Belgian. Always meddling. But some puzzles are not meant to be solved. Some must end in silence. Poirot's voice was calm, precise. Silence, monsieur. Non. It is not silence you seek. It is admiration. You taunt Poirot with your cipher, with your theatrics. You wish not only to kill, but to be acknowledged for your cleverness. Denham's eyes glittered. And if I do, what then? Tomorrow, the world will see my masterpiece. And you will have failed. With that, he stepped back, vanishing once more behind a mirror. The panel slid shut. Hastings lunged forward. Blast it, he's gone. Poirot raised a hand, restraining him. His gaze lingered on the mirror's edge, where a faint line of dust betrayed the hidden mechanism. Gone, yes, but not beyond Poirot. For every shadow leaves a trace, and Sir Charles has left us his own. They guided Evelyn safely from the House of Mirrors, the fog closing in behind them. Outside, beneath the weak glow of the gas lamps, Hastings let out a long breath. Well, Poirot, we found our man. But what now? He's too powerful, too clever. And we don't even know who his victim will be. Poirot's eyes gleamed in the mist. Patience, Hastings. Already, the cipher begins to yield. Already, the pattern shows itself. Tomorrow, on the 14th, the House of Mirrors will see blood. But whether it is Evelyn Martin's or another's, that we must yet discover. He turned, his silhouette sharp against the fog. For in a world of mirrors, mon ami, the greatest illusion is the truth itself. Chapter 4. The Mask Breaks. The morning of the 14th dawned pale and brittle. as though London itself held its breath. A fine drizzle misted the streets, coating the cobblestones in silver sheen. At Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot sat at his desk, immaculate as always, though the tension about his eyes betrayed the storm within. Spread before him were the cipher pages, now worn from hours of scrutiny. His neat handwriting covered margins, every symbol paired with notes, deductions, questions. Hastings, pacing the room, finally burst out. "Poirot, the day is here. We've no time left to play with symbols. We must act." Poirot raised a hand, calm and measured. "Monsieur Hastings, you mistake the little gray cells for play. They're the only weapons we possess against such an adversary. Action without order is chaos, and chaos is precisely what Sir Charles desires." He tapped the page with one elegant finger. "Look here. We deciphered one sentence. The victim will die on the 14th in the House of Mirrors. But there is more, Hastings. A second message hidden deeper." Hastings frowned. "A second message?" Poirot nodded gravely. "Observe. Each line of symbols begins with a triangle. At first, I thought it merely decorative. But now I see it is a marker. Each triangle signals the start of a hidden acrostic, built from the novels of Christie herself." He leaned closer, eyes gleaming. "And when we follow that thread, the words emerge. Listen, Hastings." He read softly. "Not Evelyn. The sacrifice is another. The mask must fall." Hastings stopped in his tracks. "Not Evelyn?" Then all this talk of her being the victim was misdirection. Poirot finished smoothly. "Sir Charles is clever. He uses her as bait, a reflection to draw our eyes, while the true victim remains concealed." "But who, Poirot? Who?" Poirot's gaze darkened. "That, Hastings, we must learn before midnight." By midday, they found themselves once more before the House of Mirrors. Workers moved briskly about the fairground, preparing for the grand reopening. Children ran laughing past the gates, while couples strolled arm in arm. The setting was festive, ordinary, yet beneath it pulsed a dreadful undercurrent only Poirot seemed to feel. Inside the pavilion, mirrors gleamed under the lamps, freshly polished. Yet even in daylight, the labyrinth was a place of unease. Reflections multiplied, twisted. The very air seemed to whisper deceit. Poirot examined each chamber with meticulous care. His fingertips traced gilt frames, his eyes darting to smudges invisible to others. At one panel, he halted, crouching low. "Regard, Hastings." Here, at the base of the mirror, a hinge. Not obvious, but present. This mirror is no mere reflection, it is a door. Hastings bent beside him. "A secret passage." Poirot smiled faintly. What is a house of mirrors, if not a house of secrets? They pressed on, and soon Poirot found another hinge, and another. Several mirrors doubled as hidden doors, forming a network within the maze. The possibilities were endless. A murderer could appear or vanish in silence, striking unseen. Hastings muttered, "The place is a death trap." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Precisely. And in such traps, the innocent stumble while the guilty glide." As evening approached, Evelyn Martin arrived, her face pale, her hands trembling. Poirot greeted her calmly, guiding her into a private corner of the labyrinth. "Mademoiselle," he said gently, "you fear Sir Charles, and perhaps you are right to fear. But I must ask you directly, what do you know of his plan?" Tears glimmered in her eyes. I only know fragments. He kept journals filled with notes on poisons disguised as codes. At first, I thought it eccentricity, but then I found one entry. It said, "The mirror will show the guilty face. Only then will the world understand." I swear, Monsieur Poirot, that is all I know. Poirot studied her closely. "And you brought us the letter." "Why?" "Because he is mad," she whispered. "Mad enough to kill me or anyone who stands in his way." Poirot gave a slight bow. Très bien. Then you must remain close to Hastings. He will guard you. Leave the rest to Poirot. Evelyn clutched Hastings' hand gratefully. Poirot watched them, his eyes unreadable. The evening crowds arrived in force. Music spilled from the fairground, laughter and chatter mingling with the bright lights. The House of Mirrors glowed golden, drawing patrons within. Among them moved Sir Charles Denham himself, his figure tall, imposing, his silvered hair gleaming under the lamps. He wore a mask, half gilded, in the spirit of the masquerade. Poirot observed from the shadows. Hastings whispered, "There he is, brazen as you like. Why wear a mask?" Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Because, Hastings, he means to unmask another." The crowds filtered through the labyrinth, their laughter echoing strangely. Reflections danced, doubled, multiplied. Poirot followed Sir Charles at a discreet distance, his every sense alert. Then, without warning, a scream split the air. Hastings lunged forward, dragging Evelyn behind him. "Poirot, this way." They rushed through the mirrored corridors, the scream still echoing. At last, they burst into a chamber where a small crowd had gathered. In the center lay a man collapsed upon the floor, blood staining his shirt front. His face was pale, his lips parted in shock. Poirot knelt swiftly, his hands worked with care examining. Then he looked up, eyes hard. The man is dead, stabbed through the heart. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Evelyn pressed a hand to her mouth. Hastings muttered, "But who is he?" Poirot gazed down at the lifeless features. "You do not recognize him, Hastings? This is Lord Ambrose Hanbury, Member of Parliament, a man who stood in opposition to Sir Charles Denham's enterprises." Hastings' eyes widened. Good heavens! Then the true victim was never Evelyn at all. "Non," Poirot said softly. "She was merely the shadow, the mask, the sacrifice in words to hide the true target. Sir Charles desired more than murder. He desired theater. And now he has his stage." Pandemonium broke out as attendants rushed to summon the police. Sir Charles stood among the crowd, his mask still gleaming, his expression calm, too calm. Poirot's eyes fixed upon him, and for the briefest instant, Denham's lips curved into the faintest smile. Poirot whispered, "The mask begins to crack." Hastings tugged his sleeve urgently. "Poirot, what now? He'll slip away in the chaos." Poirot shook his head. "Patience, Hastings. Sir Charles believes himself victorious. But already he has overplayed his hand. One must only wait for the final reflection." Back at Whitehaven Mansions, hours later, Poirot worked deep into the night. The cipher lay before him once more, now illuminated by the glow of the fire. Hastings, weary, fought to keep his eyes open. "Poirot, we know Denham did it. We saw enough." "Ah," Hastings, Poirot murmured. "To know and to prove are not the same. The little gray cells demand certainty." His pencil traced the final lines of the cipher. Slowly, deliberately, he pieced the symbols together. At last, he sat back, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. Voila! The final message is revealed. Hastings leaned forward eagerly. "Well, what does it say?" Poirot read aloud, his voice steady as steel. "The guilty will unmask himself when the mirror shatters." Hastings frowned. "But what does that mean?" Poirot's smile was thin, dangerous. "It means, Hastings, that Sir Charles himself has woven his downfall into his puzzle. And tomorrow, when the time is right, Poirot will see the mask break." The fire flickered low. Outside, the rain fell steady against the windows. In the silence, Poirot's voice lingered like a prophecy. "The mirror shatters soon, mon ami, and when it does, all will be revealed." Chapter 5. The Shattered Mirror. The following evening was one of storm and thunder. London groaned beneath a black sky, lightning raking across rooftops, thunder rolling like the drums of war. Within Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot prepared for his final confrontation. His mustache gleamed, his attire immaculate. Yet in his eyes, the flame of battle burned. Hastings, tense and restless, muttered as he adjusted his tie. "Poirot, we've the police on alert, the cipher solved, the motive clear. Why risk confronting Denham yourself?" Poirot straightened a cufflink. "Because, Monsieur Hastings, justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done. And Sir Charles Denham, he is a man of theater. He will not yield to brute force. He must be compelled to unmask himself, in front of witnesses, in front of mirrors, as his own cipher decreed." The House of Mirrors was deserted when they arrived, save for a handful of chosen guests. Inspector Japp, Evelyn Martin, pale but resolute, and 2 trusted attendants of the fairground. The lamps glowed dimly, throwing reflections upon reflections, each one a shadow of truth. Sir Charles Denham stood at the center of the labyrinth, tall and calm, his silver hair shining beneath the lights. He wore no mask this night, save the one of composure. His eyes, cold and calculating, flickered with something between amusement and contempt. Poirot's voice rang clear. "Non, monsieur. The riddles are at an end. It is time for truth. You wrote the cipher, you staged the theater, and you killed Lord Ambrose Hanbury. Tonight, the mirror shatters." With a sudden motion, Poirot lifted his cane and struck the great mirror before them. Glass splintered with a sound like thunder, fragments raining down in glittering shards. The reflections dissolved into chaos, and in those broken pieces, Sir Charles saw his own face multiplied, distorted, monstrous. He staggered, composure gone. His voice cracked. "Yes, yes, I killed him. He sought to destroy me, to humiliate me. I turned his death into art, into symbol, into something the world would never forget." Inspector Japp stepped forward, iron in his voice. "Charles Denham, you are under arrest." Denham laughed once, bitterly, then bowed his head as the handcuffs closed. Later, safe in Whitehaven Mansions, Hastings leaned against the mantel, still shaken. "Poirot, I'll never forget the look on his face when the mirror broke. It was as if the glass itself had judged him guilty." Poirot adjusted his mustache, serene once more. "Mais oui, Hastings." In the end, Sir Charles was undone not by Poirot, not by the police, but by his own vanity. He wished to craft a drama, and so he wrote his confession before he ever struck. The mirror was both his stage and his doom. Hastings sighed, and Evelyn, Poirot's eyes softened. She will live, free of suspicion, free of fear. For though she carried the shadow, she was never the sacrifice. Denham alone bore the guilt. Poirot leaned back, the firelight dancing in his eyes. And so, Hastings, the cipher is solved, the mirror shattered, and justice, at last, restored. And so ends the cipher in the letter A Hercule Poirot Mystery. Another riddle unraveled, another mask torn away. But remember, Mies Amos, every mystery leaves behind its echo. Somewhere, another cipher lies waiting, another shadow stirs in the dark. If you wish to walk again with Poirot through the labyrinth of lies and truths, subscribe now and join us for the next great case. Until then, watch closely, think carefully, for in every reflection, there may be a secret waiting to be seen.